gangs here in South Carolina, and investigator Robert Walker with the South Carolina Department of Corrections gave us an interview. Let's hear what he has to say about some of the prison gangs.
We got in the business of tracking gangs in 1995 as a result of a major disturbance at the Broad River Correctional Institution. We had a group later identified as the 5%ers, or the Nation of Gods and Earths, who took some hostages, assaulted some employees, and remained barricaded for almost a full day. As a result of this major disturbance, Mr. Moore, our director, Mr. Michael Moore, who had recently come from Texas and who had a lot of experience with gangs, decided that we would start our own group and for the purpose of monitoring and tracking gangs. We formalized this policy and the position which I now hold in July, and we have been tracking and monitoring gangs within the South Carolina Department of Corrections since that time.
I see. Could you explain some of the differences between a prison gang and a street gang?
Well, other than the obvious difference that a prison gang is locked up, there are some major differences. A prison gang generally is very highly structured with a hierarchy of leadership. Most prison gangs have a constitution or bylaws, rules and regulations which the members must follow, and the hierarchy would include positions such as a president or vice president, or even in military terms, a general, a lieutenant general, a captain, lieutenant, sergeants, and soldiers. The street gangs are not that well organized. Some of them do have bylaws and constitutions, but the leadership of the street gangs generally changes and is not that highly structured.
How many gangs have you identified in the Department of Corrections?
Thus far, in the 2+ years that we've been tracking gangs, we've identified over 30 gangs. Now, not all of these gangs are major gangs. Some of them are small groups of individuals who have formed these gangs since they have been incarcerated, and others came into the Department of Corrections as a small group, and they still attempt to carry on their gang activities. We have, however, identified some major gangs to include gangs which a lot of people may be familiar with, such as the Black Gangster Disciples, the Bloods, the Crips, the Ku Klux Klan, the Mexican Mafia, and several others.
I see. What are the folk and people nations?
The folk and people nations are two alliances. Actually, they formed in the prison system back in the very early 80s. They were formed to try to group gangs together as one large army, so to speak. They have different philosophies and different policies and symbols and signs. The folk nation usually will be identified with a 6-point star, the color blue, and they all identify everything to the right. The people nation will identify themselves with the color of red, a 5-point star, and they identify everything to the left. They have different philosophies, and the way I describe these two philosophies is that most people are registered voters, and when they register, they identify themselves either with the Democrats or the Republicans as a voting party. And they do this because they believe in the philosophy of those two parties. The gangs also identify with their respective nations because of the philosophies which they will follow within those nations.
There are prison gangs that are known as traditional prison gangs. What can you tell us about these gangs? We'll start off with the Mexican Mafia.
The Mexican Mafia, also known as La M, which is the Spanish word for M, originally started as a street gang. However, this carried over into the prison, and they were formed primarily to protect the Hispanics or the urban Mexican Americans from other gangs within the prison system in the state of California. The Mexican Mafia is believed to be, or thought to be, one of the most vicious gangs that we have in any prison system throughout the United States. Overkill is the norm for this particular gang. They will kill someone very viciously for the purpose of sending a message, which is, don't mess with the enemy.
The Black Guerrilla Family, the BGF.
They were founded by an individual who was earlier a Black Panther, an individual by the name of George Jackson. They are racial in their views, as many gangs are, but they are politically motivated. And the Black Guerrilla Family looks to overthrow the United States. They are very small in number, but they do carry out some very serious crimes against persons within the prison system.
The Nuestra Familia.
Nuestra Familia was formed to protect the rural Mexican Americans who were being incarcerated within the Department of Corrections in California. These young rural Mexicans, Mexican Americans, were being preyed upon by gangs from Southern California, such as the Mexican Mafia, the Aryan Brotherhood, and Nuestra Familia was formed to protect this young group of individuals within the prison system.
And you just mentioned the Aryan Brotherhood.
The Aryan Brotherhood is a white group. They accept only white members to their group. And by the way, most gangs, prison gangs, do only accept members of their own race. Here in the recent years, though, some have been known to cross over racial ties. The Aryan Brotherhood is a very vicious group within the California Department of Corrections, but has spread to numerous other departments, including the Federal Bureau of Prisons.
And finally, Bob, the 5%ers.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, this group was the group which got us into the business of tracking and monitoring gangs. The 5% Nation of Islam are also known as the Nation of Gods and Earths, were founded by an individual named Clarence Smith. He studied the faith of the Muslim faith, or the Islamic faith, under Malcolm X in New York. But he started perverting the beliefs of the religion, and when he was found out to be perverting the religion, he was suspended or expelled from the temple in which he was teaching in 1963. In 1964, he began his teachings of the 5%ers, and he went out into the community to Harlem, as a matter of fact, and started teaching the very young black youth out there about the ways of the 5%ers. The 5%ers are known to deal heavily in drugs. They are known to be violent, as was proven in not only in our department with our major disturbance, but in other departments of corrections as well. So far, they have been identified in at least 11 Department of Corrections, and are generally known to be in the community as well throughout the entire Eastern Seaboard. About a year and a half ago, Atlanta Police Department, on 2 separate occasions, arrested a group of 4 and a group of 3, I believe, individuals who were 5%ers, but who were committing crimes in the community. One group was identified as 5%ers and were originally indicted on 92 individual counts of strong-arm robbery, assaults of various nature, kidnapping, and very, very serious crimes.